Riffical Records presents the East-West Vinyl Analysis with your hosts Mark Anthony Kay and Ken Keenan. Greetings everyone and welcome to the East-West Vinyl Analysis episode number 8. I think we're just past our 1 month deadline, but we've made it. So, as usual, I am joined with my good friend and fellow podcaster from the lovely west coast of the San Francisco Bay Area, Mr. Ken Keenan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? I'm glad to be here again. Glad to do this once a month with you.
Great. We're finally getting some decent weather, maybe weather similar to your kind in that side of the country.
Sure.
No more snow. Everything's being melted. Of course, though, we got a little advisory of high wind. So, of course, we can never have it totally perfect here.
You go fly kite.
Yeah. There you go. That's a great idea. So this week, today, for this month's episode, we're going to be taking a look at something that we're going to be doing more than once. This is part 1. I'm guessing we'll probably get this as far as maybe even 3 parts or maybe 4, who knows. But we're going to be taking a look at our favorite mastering engineers. Now, for you people who out there are kind of new to the whole record collecting thing, and you're scratching your head going, what exactly is a mastering engineer? Let me put it to you like this. If a mixing engineer is a guy who's a cake maker, for example, he's the one who makes the cake and gets everything ready and gets it in the oven and stuff like that. And the mastering engineer is the guy who puts the icing on top of it. Or similarly, a mastering engineer could be viewed as this. You put a record on your stereo at home, and the mastering engineer could be viewed as that guy who comes into your house and twiddles with your EQ knobs to say that this is how it should sound when you're listening to it. So he's pretty much the man who gives it the final tweak, the final shine, and a lot of the times can be the guy who makes or breaks the record, surprisingly enough, because if he does too much of something or too little of something, it could affect the mix, and the whole sound of the album comes out not the way the artist wanted it. So they're very important in the grand scheme of things. So that's why they've become so important throughout music history, to find the right mastering engineer for certain projects. So we're going to talk about our favorite ones. We each decided to pick one this month and take a look at 3 records from that respected mastering engineer. So let's let Ken Keenan go first this month with his first selection.
Okay. My first selection, the engineer, or the mastering engineer that I have picked for my few albums here to show you is Greg Calbi. And
good choice.
Yeah, a little background on him is he kind of fell into the position, I guess. He was notified or knew somebody who worked at the record plant, and they actually one time they needed help there. They always look for help, and they asked him one time if he could drive a truck to a show. and it was actually a Yes concert to record.
Oh, really?
Yes, yeah. I think it was the Close to the Edge tour, I want to say. It was early 70s, right?
Mm-hmm. That sounds right.
Very, very, yeah. And so he said, yeah, I'll do it. And so they needed more help, and then he actually got into the studio and started helping with other stuff. So along the line, he learned all the, everything, and kind of got into the mastering, was helping with mastering, another guy with mastering. Then he met, George Marino, and those guys. He knew those. And so anyway, long story short is he had been with Sterling Sound for forever now. So, and one of the main master engineers of records out there. So anyway, having said that, I'm going to pick a few albums here that are all mastered by Greg Calbi, and I think are a true telling, pretty much, of how well he does his job, really. So, okay, first album that I'm going to pick here, and let me just get this out here. All right, is Tom Petty and Heartbreakers.
Ooh.
Damn the Torpedoes.
Good record.
Very good record. And probably, I'm thinking, this is one of the best. Certain records just sound great. This is one of those, to me, it just sounds perfect. Just very bright, clear, good separation on the instruments. You can really hear everything. Just clean. And this was the first album I bought of Tom's when I started getting into Tom Petty. This is the first one that kind of got me hooked on Tom Petty. So this album was on his Backstreet label, 1979, and we have the back of the album, and actually on the credits down here it will say it's got I know it says it somewhere, I'm looking at it now. Engineered back. Where's the mastering? Oh, I thought it was there.
It could be on the inner sleeve,
I think it's on the inner sleeve,
lyrics are.
But anyway, it was Backstreet Records. So let me get the inner sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
So the inner sleeve, one side we have picture of Tom Petty smoking, and then we have here's the other side's kind of funny. Picture there with the Groucho Marx glasses on. Now let's see if we can see on here. Here we go. Mixed at Cherokee Record Plant, New York City. Here it is down here, mastered by Greg Calbi at Sterling Sound, New York City. So it's in there. I don't know if you can even see it or not, but
I can put it up a little bit and move it to your right, or
this way.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, there you go.
So
perfect.
So yeah, he mastered it. It's on there. Sometimes they write it in on the back of the album, or in here, or in some cases you'll see a marking on the record. So here's the label of. Let's see if I get that there. His own Backstreet label. They gave him his own label because he. I don't know if everyone knows the story about that, but I'm not going to go into it. It's kind of long. But basically, he fought. He's one of the artists that fought back on the the record company, and so on. So this had great songs like, of course, everyone knows "Don't Do Me Like That," which was the first single. Let's see, it's "Refugee," right? That was the one that really got me hooked. Here Comes My Girl, another great song. Even the Losers, another fantastic. Shadows of a Doubt, maybe you might have heard that. Century City, it's just a really good album. Now, if I can see here, if this one had any markings, I think it just has the Sterling stamp on it in here somewhere. Where's that? CG. Yeah, I can't. The light right here is not that good, but I can't remember what this one had on it. So anyway,
most likely it'll say master disc, and it'll probably say
master disc sometimes,
GC,
and sometimes
and
it'll say
GC.
Right, lots of times it'll say GC in certain cases, or it'll say Sterling is stamped in there, like a stamp. You'll see Sterling. So when you say Sterling, you're probably knowing it's probably a pretty good darn mastering job.
Yeah,
on it. All right, so that's it. It came out in '79. It sold 3 million from what I was reading. 3 million records in the U.S.
Very nice.
It was number 2 on the charts. So just a very good. I recommend that if you like Tom Petty at all, or want a great sounding Tom Petty. I think that's his best sounding album.
Yeah, I've heard quite a, I've heard the record obviously numerous times, and
Sure.
I've read many of articles saying how it's one of the go-to albums sonically if you're gonna buy vinyl. So
Yeah.
it's one of those records. So that's a very excellent choice and a great engineer to take a look at for this episode.
Yeah.
Now, in parallel to that, the engineer that I chose is somebody that I'm sure that most people will have been very familiar with. And once I say the name, you'll know why I said that. I'm talking about Mr. Robert C. Ludwig, better known as Bob Ludwig, who is probably, I don't know, I guess if there's a family tree or like a pyramid of engineers that are mastering, he's probably up here, and everybody kind of trickles down below him. Though people might argue with that. Some people might say, people like, Mr. Porky there, he might be way up there, right?
Yeah, Porky.
Wally Traugott could be up there as well. Ray Staff could be up there too, who did a lot of the British stuff, Bowie, and did some Rush records too. So there's a lot of people, and as you can see now you know why we're thinking about maybe making this a 3 or 4 part series, because there's so many people to talk about, right? But Mr. Ludwig has done over 3,000 albums to his credit. And I mean, we're talking about everybody from like Zeppelin to Queen to Jimi Hendrix, Brian Ferry, Paul McCartney, Nirvana, Bruce Springsteen, Daft Punk, like everything, in the kitchen sink, pretty much he's had his hands on. Now, just a little quick background on him. He did go to school to properly learn this. He wasn't one of these guys who just kind of fell into it. He actually went in and kind of pursued it. He got his bachelor's and master's degree at Eastman School of Music, and the Eastman School of Music of the University of Rochester, New York. There you go. That's the proper way it should be said. And while he was there, he got involved in the sound department, and as well as being the principal trumpet player at the Utica Symphony Orchestra. He was inspired by Phil Ramone.
Oh, Phil Ramone.
When he came to Eastman to teach a summer recording workshop. Ludwig ended up working as his assistant.
Oh, wow.
Afterwards, he was contacted and offered to work with Ramone at A&R Recording. So together they did sessions and projects with the band, Peter, Paul and Mary, Neil Diamond, and Frank Sinatra. So that's kind of his early on, his in to the whole business, right? Later on, a few years later at A&R, Ludwig received an offer from Sterling Sound, where he eventually became vice president. After 7 years at Sterling, he moved to its competitor, Masterdisc, where he was vice president and chief engineer. In 1993, Ludwig left Masterdisc to start his own record mastering facility in Portland, Maine, named Gateway Mastering Studios. And I know Gateway is a phenomenal mastering studio. A lot of the great high definition CDs that came out, I remember Megadeth did a bunch of them. Yes has one. Magnification as a HD CD. They were all done by Ludwig at this Gateway Mastering, and they sound incredible. Like, I mean, they make your speakers seriously move in your car or at home or whatever. So that's a bit of his work. Now, the reason why I'm very much inspired by him as an engineer who works on stuff as well is because, to me, a sign of a good mastering engineer is not just somebody who can make music that I like sound good, but he can also make music by bands that I'm not too hip on sound good on record. And when somebody can do that and catch my attention, then I know he's doing something really good and I should pay attention to what he's doing. Now, my first record I'm going to show is just that kind of an example. This is not a band that I hate, don't get me wrong, but it's certainly not a band that I have many records of. In fact, I think at this point I only have 3, and a couple of 45s, which is nothing compared to what I have in my collection of other bands, right?
Sure.
So the band that I'm going to be talking about, now let me just get this out so I can do this properly, otherwise it'll be all glare, is the Rolling Stones.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And this is Tattoo You. which is a great record. I'm sure everybody's familiar with this record. We have, Start Me Up,
Start Me Up.
Black Limousine, Waiting on a Friend, Heaven,
I used to have
Little TNA. It's a good
yeah.
it's a good album. And the funny thing about this record, just a little side note, is that this was a record compiled basically by saying, here's a bunch of songs that we have. If you can make heads or tails of it, go ahead. The engineers went in, mixed it, put it together, because this is just stuff that they had lying about from years past. They went in, did their job on it, and released it, and it ended up being one of their biggest records. And now if you look at here, let's see, not that side, this side, you'll see that there's a leaf on the top corner.
Like Canadian?
Yep. Okay. This is a Canadian pressing of the record. But he also was responsible for the mastering and the cutting of the vinyl, of the lacquer for this. And that's when the engineer is involved in that aspect of it, the cutting of the lacquer, is mainly when you'll see the initials put in there. Because there's lots of times where you've seen engineers who just did the mastering and then somebody else cut the lacquer, and you'll look at the vinyl and go, well, wait a minute. Let's say, for example, it's Alan Zentz mastered it. So you're expecting to see AZ on there. Sometimes you may not see it, and you'll see like CB written in there. Okay, why is Chris Bellman in there? Well, because he cut the vinyl. He may not have, Alan may not have been involved with that part of it. He may have just did the final master and sent the tapes, and they cut it. You know what I mean? But sometimes people like Bob Ludwig do the mastering, and then they'll cut their own lacquers as well, right? So here's a look at the album.
Yeah, that looks familiar.
Yeah. Now, I'm very, very certain that there's no way in God's green earth you're going to see any sort of engravings on there at all.
It's hard, yeah.
But basically, in a nutshell, I'll tell you here. There's like a stamp of master disc, like it's a stamping.
Yeah, there's this.
And right beside it, you'll see RL, which is the Robert Ludwig sign of his. So, again, speaking about this record, when I got it, the first thing that struck me was his sort of mastering is very full. The one thing that really stands out with all his masterings throughout his records, and I'll get to that as we go through some of his other ones, is he has a love of good full bottom end. Like his bass drums are usually very solid. His bass guitars are usually really, present in the mix, right? And even though he doesn't have no involvement with the mix, but he can still bring out those little nuances within the mix if he wants them to, right? So. And that's one thing that's very interesting, because I think I spoke a while back. I had a copy of Kiss Alive that had the first side A was a Alan Zentz lacquer cut, and then side B, like side 2, 3, and 4 were all Robert Ludwig.
Yeah, right.
So you can tell the difference when you flip the sides, because Alan Zentz had a much more pronounced mid-range, where the guitars are much more in your face, and the drums are good, but they weren't as heavy as the Robert Ludwig mix. You would flip it over, and all of a sudden Peter Criss's drums had much more kick to it, much more present. The guitars are a little bit more ducked back, because all of a sudden the bass guitar and drums came up. So you can tell those little differences between different mastering engineers. So with this record, it sounds great, because you have Charlie Watt and Bill Wyman, one of the best rhythm sections in rock, people would say. And, they're rocking together, and that's really pronounced on this record. It sounds really good. And Robert Ludwig loves his electric guitars, especially those kinds of, Fender Strats and, Fender Reverb amps. So they really kind of sing on these kind of records. So I think it's a great sounding album. And one of those ones where simultaneously, how you were talking about Damn the Torpedoes being a good example of a record to show, if you're buying, let's say, a new stereo system, like listen to this record on it, and you'll know how good it is. This is probably another good example of that as well. Right. So that's my first pick. How about your numero 2?
Yeah, that's a good pick. And I just one other thing is, these mastering engineers, that they're taking, the artist's vision of their sound and the producer's sound, and trying to, make sure it is what they wanted to hear, when it comes out, because they can really screw it up if they wanted to. So that's part of the job of the engineer to get feedback even from and they would, right? They will cut a bunch of lacquers, maybe different mixes, right? Masters, and then they will pick the one like you have done with your own album, right? Where you've maybe listened to certain ones. This one sounds better than the other, vinyl and that sort of thing. So, they try to get the best idea of what the artist is looking for, whether they want it, something more up front, whether it's the vocal or the guitars, or like you said, the bass in certain cases, Robert Ludwig, that sort of thing. So I just bring that up.
Well, I mean, it's a good point too, because just really quickly before you go on, that example that you said happened exactly with me. I had an acetate cut of my record. I brought it home, listened to it, and it wasn't quite what I wanted, so they had to go back and they cut me another acetate. And after I was okay with that, then they did the test pressings of it, and then you listen to it, and if you like it, then you end up using it. And a great example of that too is I showed one time I had a Van Halen 1 test pressing, and I'm convinced from having heard it numerous times now compared to the actual release that came out, there are some differences in it. I know, for example, Atomic Punk is a little bit different on my test pressing than the final. And there's just little things where volumes might be a little bit different. And those things happen because, like you said, they might be doing 7, 8 different acetates that until an artist says, that's the one, we're using this one. Right? So, and it happens. So that's another important thing to remember when the mastering process occurs.
Yes, good points. I'd also, before I get into it, I have a list of some of the albums, other albums that Greg Calvi had done. I was bringing it up on the screen. For instance, some of the early stuff he did, like let's just say Harry Nilsson, Pussycats, Walls and Bridges, John Lennon's, The Raspberries Starting Over. I know he did the Born to Run album for Bruce Springsteen. Let's see, Y&T, SJ&T, one of their first album. Blondie's first album. The Ramones' first album. A lot. These, and if you read, like Robert Ludwig's, you're gonna read a bunch of albums and artists that very well. So anyway,
and another thing to make a good point about too is one thing that's been brought up numerous times is that depending on where these mastering engineers are located, they might appear on different records, because, for example,
that's right.
If you have a US pressing that comes out on the East Coast, they're going to send those tapes or keep it on that side of the country. If a record label is on the West Coast, they usually try to use people on the West Coast for it. And simultaneously, something that's interesting that we'll bring up, I'm sure, in this episode is even when they go overseas for other overseas releases, sometimes they've cut their own lacquers for it, whereas the person that we're so used to who appeared on it may not appear on that cutting, but sometimes they do use those cuttings too. So it's a really interesting topic when you really dig deep into it.
Well, your point on the thing about Kiss Alive, where it had Alan Zantz on one side of side one, and then Robert Ludwig was on the other three. You kind of wonder how that happened, and sometimes you'll have a same album mastered by two different. It would be another pressing, I guess, of it possibly. And sometimes, I guess in certain cases, you might get a later pressing that could sound better than an earlier pressing, but it's not likely. But it can happen, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
all right. So let's move on to yours.
Let's move on, since we're just getting going on and on about this. Okay. But all right. So the second album mastered by Greg Calvi I picked is by an artist, and most people are not going to know this artist, but it's Moon Martin, And this album was his second, I believe, second album. Yeah, Escape from Domination. He was basically started out more of like a rockabilly type artist and composer, and he wrote. If you'll know one of the songs for sure, if anyone's heard "Bad Case of Loving You," that Robert Palmer sang, that was off of Moon Martin's first album, but he wrote that song. So that's the style of it was straight ahead rock, roots kind of rock, early rock sound of his songs. That's the way he wrote. But this is another great sounding album. And I believe this one came out, I think I want to say it's 70. I want to say 78 or 79 also. But it's the back of the album. And I know this might be the one that says Greg Calby on here on the back. And this is another one, it's hard to read because of the way you have it. But he's on here. I know he's on here. But it's hard to read it because of the way it's on there. It's somewhere up in there. But anyway. So, this is another album that sounds really good. Similar in the way Tom Petty's was sounding. And I think I bought this album because I heard there was one song on here that I liked, and then I bought it, and then the rest of the album was just, to me, it was great. A great, rock album. And like I said, it's more like a roots rock. But here's a label, nice label on there, custom label. And is this the one that has? I don't know if it has it, but I think it does say Sterling on here. I think it has the initials on here too. Yep. I think there's initials on here. But anyway, this is a real good one. Let me get the insert. Actually, the insert had the lyrics also, and this is the one that has a cutout hole. I think it was considered a promo on this one, on this company. But some picture of him. He kind of looked interesting looking guy, but he was very good at writing a lot of great songs. This one had. The songs I liked on here was like Rolene, very similar to kind of the Bad Case of Loving You type song. It's called Rolene, and there's I Got a Reason. No, obviously these weren't all hits. I think the one song was kind of a hit was actually a slow song on here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which was called No Chance. It was No Chance of Loving You. It was a mellow song, and that's what kind of, I guess, got me to recognize him or to, look into him. And then most of his stuff is just rock, but not a whole lot. Yeah, he has a couple of mellow songs, but it's a really good. If you like roots kind of rock, straight ahead stuff, guitars, nice, great guitar riffs. This is real good album, and it's again great sounding.
I take it he's an American artist?
He's an American artist. I think he is from the Texas area. Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't say I've honestly heard of this guy. But again, this is what's great about these kind of episodes that we do, is that we pull out sometimes records that we are unfamiliar with. And due to our respect for each other's taste, we can sometimes get, shown records that we might take a chance on now and check out because of it, right?
Yeah.
Great. So, what year was that record?
Like I said, I think I have it here. Let me bring it up. It was 1979. So it's funny, same year as the Tom Petty album. It got as high as, it says, number 80 on the Billboard 200. So the album itself didn't. I mean, he was pretty much an unknown artist.
He got on the chart.
His biggest money-making thing is probably that Bad Case of Loving You, which was a huge hit for Robert Palmer.
Oh yeah.
Which I'm sure he's still making money off of today.
Yep, songwriting credits.
Yeah. So I like the album.
Great.
It sounds great.
Awesome. Well, it's another great pick and an interesting one because it's not exactly a common record by any stretch of the imagination. Now, for my second pick, we will be going to a very common record, I think, or at least common to most people. But the reason why I picked this one is because it hits on a few things that we talked about earlier. And you'll see what I'm talking about once I start going through it. Now, again, let me prep it here, because I hate this damn glare that you get from these covers, especially when they're in these wrappings here. Okay, so we are taking a look at moving pictures.
Mm-hmm. Sure, yep.
And your microphone's muted, I can't hear you.
I know that one.
Okay.
Good album.
Yeah, it's a really, really good album. The thing that's interesting about this album is if you take a look right here, where my finger was, you'll notice that that's not a usual North American catalog number.
Oh, okay.
What does that mean? That means that if you were to look down here, which I'm sure you're not going to be able to read that,
okay,
but
sure.
It does say printed in the Netherlands.
Oh, the Netherlands.
Phonogram.
Okay.
So, and this is a pressing from the Netherlands. Now, I'll show you this. This is a much different center label than the usual ones.
Yeah, I like that blue label.
Yeah.
Was it blue and silver, right?
Yeah. And over here is side B. Now, the thing that's really interesting about this that I found, and one of the reasons why I actually got it, was because this has on it stamped master disc and handwritten the RL. Both sides. This is a Robert Ludwig version of the record. Now, why is this so, interesting in any other capacity? Well, because, like I said before, it's very rare that a record company would risk sending over master tapes overseas to get a record done.
Yeah.
Now, chances are that's what happened. This is 1980, I believe. 1980, 81.
I think it's 80.
81.
Oh, 80.
And it's kind of interesting to think that they sent that over, because the only other option they would have had was to send over the metal parts for it and to make their stampers out of that. But most of the time, we wouldn't do that because they can get damaged, they can get lost. It's the same thing with the tapes, right? But usually you want to make your own ones because you want to make multiple copies of stuff, because, chances are, let's say a stamper lasts 2,000 albums, you're going to be printing more than 2,000 copies of a Rush record. That's for damn sure. So they probably sent over the tapes, and like I said before, this is really rare that they sent it over to the Netherlands to get that done. Now, as far as the sound of this record, I'm sure lots of people have heard songs like Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, YYZ, Limelight, and that's just all on side A. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So you also have Camera Eye, Witch Hunt, Vital Signs. I mean, this whole record, if you want to listen to a record that has a fantastic sounding drum set on it, this is it. They did such a great job on this. Even Geddy Lee's bass sound, a lot of people really target this album as Geddy Lee's great sound on bass. And a lot of it is his Rickenbacker. A lot of it, surprisingly enough, we've only learned recently, is his Fender jazz bass. Most people thought it was entirely Rickenbacker, but it wasn't. It was a lot of his Fender jazz bass was used on this album. So I thought that was a big revelation for us us Rush fans about that. And it's interesting because it sounds very full for a three-piece, and the sound of the mix is very three-piece. There's drums, bass, guitars, vocals, keyboards here and there, but when you listen to it, there isn't 1,000 other overdubs. Sure, they did overdub, left, right, guitar, maybe doubled it a bit, but that's about it. There's no other things going on too much in there. Sure, maybe there's an acoustic guitar, but like I said, really, essentially, when you listen to this record, it's a three-piece, and the way it ended up sounding so full is a credit not only to Terry Brown, but to Robert Ludwig. And another thing, too, this is one of the very early albums that was mastered onto digital as well. So when you take a look at it, when you look at the stamping on the CD, for example, they used to have those little boxes on there, ADD or AAA or DD. So this is one of the first ones that had the ADD stamping on it, which means that they mastered the final mix to digital, which means that Robert Ludwig most likely did the vinyl cut off of digital for this. Now, sounds good to me. I think everybody and their brother probably owns a copy of this record. If you own any Rush record, chances are you own this one. So I don't think that there's many people who are saying it sounds like ass, right? So I think that's another great showing of sometimes how we can frown on digital, not knowing, for example, that we might have been listening to a digital cut record. Now, another thing that I wanted to show here was, now, I know I didn't exactly say I was going to do this, but just bear with me. But I also have here another
pressing
moving pictures. Now, if you're to take a look at this one, at the bottom here, I don't know how well you're going to see that.
Anthem.
But it says Anthem.
Yeah.
Now, this is the Canadian pressing, and a pretty early one of it, if I'm not mistaken. Because if you were to look at the information here, I believe it says that it was done. Actually, I'll see it better on the actual vinyl itself. But yeah, it says here that it is a capital EMI one. Yeah, distributed by Capitol Records EMI of Canada, which is usually the very earlier Anthem records. Now, if you take a look here, that's the label that they had here in Canada. And why I decided to bring this one up is because, ironically, and I didn't know that we were going to be actually talking about this, but this is an example of something else we were talking about. Because if you were to take a look on this here in the Dead Wax, you'll see it says Master Disc RL, that's side A. But if you flip this now and take a look at it, you're going, what's this? There's no master disc, but it does say TLC, which is the lacquer channel. And it has QC or OC. This is the one thing that I'm still in a little bit of a mystery that I'm being researching of who that is, because Lacquer Channel has had people that worked the night shift. That, and the night shift did most of the lacquer cuttings, from what I learned, right, back in the day. So I'm trying to discover who this mysterious night shift guy was. But this is an example of a record that has two different mastering engineers working on it. So side B, which has the Camera Eye, Witch Hunt, and Vital Signs, was done at the Lacquer Channel on this release.
I wonder what mine says on it. How do I pull that out? Should I pull it out and look?
Take a look. I mean, I'm curious because is this something that happened for most of the Canadian ones, or is this something that was like a one-off? Or because, like we were talking about before, it's possible that maybe one of the stampers got busted, or it was just done with, and they didn't have another copy of it, so they had to get on the horn to somebody and say, "Hey, listen, we need something," and they got him to do it.
Mine was, and I gotta buy it. This is my only copy right now as of now, but I need to get more. This is actually what's funny about this one, this is a polygram, Mercury polygram, but this is a CRC copy.
Oh, okay,
in the
good.
lower
Record
right-hand
club.
corner has a.
So this is probably like 85. This is
It's a record club, but I don't know if it's really 85 because let's see. I know this one has a T1 Columbia, New York stamp in it.
Oh,
It's interesting.
yeah, I'm familiar with that stamp.
Yeah, Columbia, New York. Let's see what if it has anything different on their side. Oh, again, Columbia, New York.
So this is fascinating because that means that this is a third company that's involved in the pressing of it.
Oh, yeah. So, I don't know. From what I remember listening to this one, it sounds surprisingly pretty good. Though I would like to get the Ludwig ones. I'm not sure who was the real master person for this one here. But yeah, I'd like to get that. I need to get actually another copy.
And I know for a fact that there's also another pressing floating around of a moving picture that has Robert Ludwig on side A and Howie Weinberg on side B.
Yeah,
as well, and they were two master disc engineers. So that's possible that he might have cut one on an emergency flight. He might have called in and said, "We need something cut from side B," and maybe Ludwig was gone at that point, or who knows, and he just did the cut for them. So
yeah,
there's an example of a really great sounding record, and two examples there of what we were talking about earlier, right? Overseas press with using those tapes and two separate companies on either side.
And they'll sound different. They will sound a little bit different. Some will sound better than other ones. So it's good to keep in mind, though, that if you can find the ones with the best known engineers out there who are known for their great sounding records, to look for that when you're out there at the record store, trying to look at the dead wax.
And the thing too to keep in mind, and you might find this very hard to believe at first, is that when you're looking around for stuff, keep in mind that maybe you'll even start looking for specific ones because that's the sound you like.
True.
It may not even be. Maybe somebody out there doesn't like Robert Ludwig record cuts. Maybe he prefers George Marino cuts opposed to Robert Ludwig. So there might come a time where you might prefer a certain engineer's sound, and you'll collect them because of that.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
All right. Okay. So that was my second. Let's see what your numero 3 is.
Numero 3. Again, and I've shown probably this band. I know I've shown this band before, but this is another Greg Calby mastering. This band is one of my favorites. Again, is Blackfoot. And this one has this is Blackfoot Tomcatton. Came out in 80, June of 80. This is hard rock, southern hard rock. It's pretty heavy. They're known as the heaviest of the bunch out there. So they were the ones that really rocked. This is a great album. I remember listening to this album throughout the summer, that summer of 80, a lot. But this is a promo, as you can see by this label. Sometimes you'll see the label with the track listing on the front of the cover. This also has does it have? Yep, it does have a stamp.
Gold stamp
down there. So it has the front and the back cover of the band, pictures of the band. I think it does say it back here on here about mastering by Greg Calby on this one. And I think this one actually, let me bring this up here. Just a generic, this one has a generic, one of their generic Atlantic group inserts. And it's on the Atco label. And this is one of those Atco labels you may have seen before, I'm sure. And this, and if I look at it here, I'm pretty sure it says GC on here. I know I've seen it. And going around. Yeah, there's a GC there. It's like a lowercase GC, the way he writes it. And it's right next to the Sterling stamp. He wrote it to the right of it on this. So yes, Greg Calby did this one. Now this one is more, and it may have been the band's request, but this is a more I wouldn't say separation, but more of a fuller sounding, thicker sounding, and I think that's probably what they were going for. They're pretty pretty heavy on a lot of their songs, rocking, and I'm thinking that was the plan on that. Though on some of the there's some acoustic stuff on here too, a little bit, but that's sounds very clean, which is I guess a trademark of his stuff too. But yeah, this is just a great rock and southern rock album. Not my favorite of theirs, but one of the best ones of theirs. You know, there's they had a number of albums, but this is one of the what I would call the holy trinity of Blackfoot albums. So it's kind of the middle album of a trinity that they had, but just rocks. I mean, it's just another good album.
Isn't there one that they have that has like a red background?
Yeah, so that holy trinity of albums. What's funny about those albums? They have an animal, right? Like this one has like a cat, you know, or a tomcat, what you want to call it, right? Like maybe it's a panther, Black Panther, it might be.
Black Panther, yeah.
Looks like, and the one before it was Blackfoot Strikes, which is actually coming out again. Actually, it's being released as a remaster on vinyl that I'm going to be getting, but it has a snake, the cobra snake on the cover. So the Strikes, you know,
yeah,
get it. And then the one after this tomcat is Blackfoot Marauder, and it has like a bluish background, and it has like a falcon, or you know, the head of a falcon. I think it's a falcon or hawk, one of the two, on the cover of the album. So
because I believe, because I have, my interest has been piqued from this band. I have checked out some of this stuff from before, and at one of their local record stores I go to, they have a beautiful Strikes Japanese pressing there, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm thinking I might grab it," because it sounds, by the sound of it, that these are records to get, and you know, Japanese one might be what the doctor ordered.
Yeah,
you know.
Oh yeah, I would definitely get a Japanese one. Yeah, so yeah, like I said, those are the three albums. They had a couple albums before, and which were pretty good. Were pretty rocking. But they hadn't kind of hit their stride until that Strikes album, you know, that you saw in the store. And then they did pretty good. And then later on, they kind of, the record company got too involved, and they kind of, you know, petered out, or what you want to call it, you know.
Yeah. Interesting. So those are three excellent selections of records.
Yep.
I thank you very much for those. And now we will get onto my last one. My last one is one of those examples of where when the record came out, you would think to yourself, okay, I already know this record's going to sound good because of who's involved in it. Then you find out that Robert Ludwig mastered it, and you're like, my God, this record has got to sound incredible. And it does. And this is one of those records where I'm telling you, there's records that throughout the years suffer from 80s production, right? And don't age well with time, right? But this is not one of them. This record aged incredibly well, and in fact, I think within their catalog is a record that you could listen to and put on radio anytime, and that is 90125.
Yep.
Now this, as you can see, is still in its shrink wrap. It's not sealed. It
says open at the end. Okay.
But it has the original hype sticker and price tag.
Yeah.
On it. Now, this is I'm pretty sure it's a U.S. press. Yep. This is an original first pressing U.S. album.
Yep.
Now, it's ironic that you showed your Blackfoot record, because you were talking about that label, and the label is exactly the same.
Yeah, about the same.
Because they're on Atco.
Period. Yeah, time period for that label. Yep.
Now, of course, everybody knows this record. We have Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Yes.
Hold On, Changes, It Can Happen. You have Cinema, Leave It. right? City of Love, Hearts. And of course, when you take a look at it and you look into Dead Wax, you're like in heaven when you realize it says Master Disc and it has RL beside the Master Disc on it. Now, I bought this not long ago. I gave it a once quick clean in the good old spin clean. It's absolutely near mint, and it sounds like breathtaking. No noise, no nothing, and I mean, just those opening hits from Owner of a Lonely Heart, those sampled parts just sound incredible, and it's such a great record. I mean, Trevor Horn did such a great job with this album. I mean, the tones are fantastic. It doesn't sound dated. The vocals sound incredible. It's a great record. It's another one of these sonically well done ones where you can put it on to a brand new stereo and just be in awe of what comes out of the speakers. Now, again, I brought out another. Excuse me, my throat's been really bugging me lately. But so excuse my hacking all the time. But I brought another example here of something that we were talking about earlier, and that is I have a Japanese press of this record.
Nice.
Now, this one's a bit different. You take a look at the back.
Okay.
Now that's what's interesting about that is that it's sort of just a cover.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when you flip this off the back here, you have the original sort of thing in the back. Now the Japanese are very famous for that kind of stuff. I mean, we as Kiss collectors, we know that they seem to like to do that with like Lick It Up and stuff like that as well. Now the reason why I brought this one up and brought it out is because, again, something that we were talking about earlier. Now you take a look at this. Here is the label. Atco. Same thing, but it has the Japanese catalog code at the top. And the funny thing is, on top of this, where it says side 2 and side 1. Now I'm not 100% certain about this, but I believe that might possibly say mean a promo on it.
No.
I'm not 100% certain on that because our good friend Alan, who lives in Japan, once was able to decipher something like that for me on a Yes album.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that was the thing that said it, but that's not the reason why I brought it out. The reason why I brought it out was because, much to my surprise, when I looked at it one day, I flipped it and I was like, this is really cool. I'm like, what's going on with this? I took a look, and bam, there was a stamp. Master Disc. I was like, oh, Master Disc.
So another one where they
and then RL. Yeah, RL, both sides, Robert Ludwig. And I was like, okay, now that really got my attention because I had bought it and hadn't listened to it at that point. And I was like, okay, so now I have a Japanese pressed record, which is supposed to be 1,000 times quieter, better pressed than the normal ones. And I have Robert Ludwig mastering it now. So, of course, I put it on. And what can I say? It was like, oh, it was like, it sounded so good. It was such a good record. I mean, honestly, the U.S. first press is excellent. I mean, especially if you live in the United States, you could probably find that one for $5 somewhere. And it's a great record. But if you have the means to find the Japanese one, I highly, highly suggest it. I mean, you want to talk about a drum set that sounds really good. I mean, just those basic drum beats like in Owner of a Lonely Heart, he just does the kick and snare and the hi-hat. Unbelievable. It sounds like you're in the room with him. It's so nicely done. Like it's so good. Like, one thing about this record I really enjoy, especially on that cut of it, is that you can hear the room reflection in it. Like on the drum set when he's doing the beats, you can hear like the room sound in it as well. And the delay on John Anderson's voice and all that are a lot more clear and audible than it is on other press. It's just, I've said it 100 times. There's just certain things that make me excited about a record. And it's things like that where you can hear the rooms that they're in, the reflections. You can hear all the effects working a lot clearer. It's just, or even sometimes you can hear people making a little intake of breath when they're going to sing. stuff like that. It's like when I hear more humanity in the recording, that's when I really like it, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
but that's my third selection, and I think that it's a pretty decent one to go out on.
Yeah, no, that's a real good sign. I did used to have that on my first round of records. I did buy that when it came out, way back, and though again, as one of those ones I'm going to have to restock because I had let go of my whole record collection of vinyl, just about all of it, back around 1990 or so. So yeah. I know that's a good album, and I'll have to look out for the Robert Ludwig pressing of it.
Awesome. So I think that's at the end of our episode, I think.
Yeah.
I think we have covered everything pretty nicely with those two engineers. Again, I'm very certain that we will continue with this, whether it'll be the next episode or maybe the one after it, who knows. But I definitely think we're going to continue with this. I like the idea of it, and I like how we can show different pressings and different albums that we might not be familiar with again. You know, I really think that that's very important to do on these sorts of shows. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Do you have anything to close off with?
No, other than it's fun talking about this stuff, and about these engineers. It's kind of interesting to see what they produced. And what's funny is the one I was looking at Greg Calvi's stuff, and I noticed he did the music from The Elder, Kiss. But the thing is, and I have several copies of music from The Elder, but I don't have the one. I'm like, well, what's going on? So I have to go and get the copy of The Elder with Greg Calvi doing the mastering. So something I got to do.
But isn't that part of the fun of this? The hunt.
It's
now
the hunt.
To go and say.
Now I have to hunt for it.
I'm going to go and find it now and search it.
Yes. Yep. So I know it's going to sound good. I know it's going to sound good with him, and so I'm looking forward to getting that.
Well, I think that if you find it, we should put a little side note on one of the episodes, and you can tell us how it sounds in comparison to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yes. All right. So I think that's it for us until our next episode. So we thank you very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. This way you can find out when our next episode comes out. Again, it'll be a month, maybe less, who knows. This is all has to do with scheduling, of course. Right now I'm very tied up with making a record, and I've also just released one on vinyl that's coming out now, and I've been busy shipping and getting stuff out, so time is a little bit tight. But once the record is out and shipped, and once I've kind of gotten to a point on my record, it will be a little bit lesser of a time constraint, and we'll get on to this and on to the next episode. So, for myself, Mark Anthony K, and for my good buddy Ken Keenan, we wish you all a very good weekend, and we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.